It would be good to have a season or two under our belts as we run out of ground in the Yukon. Say something like, all right, here's the score. This is how Alaskan ground looks. You have to focus on the future, don't you? $14 million. Before Parker Schnabel suddenly closed the mine, his workforce extracted an incredible amount of gold from the earth. This was a success. It was an indication of tremendous achievement. From a child assuming his grandfather's land to a kingpin defending his domain. The secrets of a golden kingdom are the subject of this tale. Young guns are risk takers. The story of Parker Schnabel, the undeniable young king of the Klondike, seems like a tall tale in the present era. In actuality, though, it all started with an enormous gamble. At the age of 16, he made the historic choice to leave his family's large nugget mine and take over the mining business from his renowned grandfather, John Schnabel. This summer job wasn't easy. The dive into the brutal depths of the gold mining industry was a life-altering experience. The teen was under a great deal of pressure, to be honest. He wasn't merely attempting to uphold his family's reputation. He was adamant about leaving his own mark. He needed his own ground to do that. I don't give a damn if you guys despise me. I need some respect from you. Who is in charge? Yes, you are. It doesn't seem that way. Don't dismiss my staff without first consulting me. Many seasoned miners were shocked by Parker's decision to lease a new claim he thought was brimming with gold with $100. Of his own funds, a fortune for anyone, much less a teenager. The crushing weight of that choice is something that isn't discussed enough. He was placing all of his money on a supposition. He was aware that he needed to be extremely quick and shrewd in order to hit his ambitious aim in the renowned Klondike terrain, since both his reputation and the future of his team were at stake. This resulted in what at the time looked to be an odd strategic choice. He made the decision to divide his crew into two separate teams, the majority of whom were still unfamiliar with Alaska's harsh conditions. Their entire season would be defined by this action. The Wolf Cut crew was the initial unit. Their task was to take the lead and explore unexplored areas of the claim. Their labor was a slow, cruel struggle with the permafrost. To reveal the pay dirt to the sun, they had to excavate 30 feet into virgin earth, removing the frozen overburden layers. You see, the Yukon is actually experiencing a race against the clock. The wash plant cannot separate the gold if the ground is not thawed. With no gold pouring in to help cover the expenses, the Wolf Cut crew was spending a fortune on fuel and labor just to get the land ready. The Drift Cut team, under the direction of Tyson and his reliable foreman Mitch, were on the opposite side of the operation. They had the exact opposite job. Waiting for the earth to thaw was not an option. To maintain the entire business financially viable, they had to locate gold, and they had to find it quickly. We have been putting a lot of strain on these wash plants throughout the year, but now is the time to put them under the most strain. All the way to the end. That's all there is to it. Hopefully, this ground has some gold in it. They scouted their region carefully, looking for any indication of color and panning samples. A small dot in the ground, a promising gravel layer that might bring them a fortune. Both crews worked non-stop as the week turned into a month. The entire world was watching to see if Parker could really pull off his huge Alaskan risk, which had now officially turned into a race against time. Bills were the only things accumulating while the sun pounded on the claim, and a profound sense of uneasiness was starting to set in. The two teams worked in different universes for what seemed like an eternity, each engaged in a distinct conflict. Everyday existence for the Wolf Cut crew was a gradual, grueling struggle against the planet itself. Bulldozers moved mountains of frozen soil, while the enormous excavators scraped away layers of dirt day after day. The boredom and debilitating physical toll of this type of work are things that are seldom truly depicted on television. There was no gold to be found. All they were doing was moving tons and tons of dirt, driven solely by the hope that a golden treasure may be found 30 feet below the surface. On this side of the claim, the atmosphere was a tense mix of rising dread and strained optimism. Each day, the operation lost thousands of dollars because they couldn't discover color. A different, more direct form of pressure was being felt by the drift cut crew in the meantime. They weren't merely getting ready for what lay ahead. The bills for the present were expected to be paid by them. Tyson and Mitch relentlessly pushed their little team. They were constantly exploring, looking for that distinctive flash of yellow in every pan of mud. This week has been really difficult. We have been battling to keep these rock trucks running out here. I'm eager to find out the truth about this. 60 feet below the surface. Hopefully, the pans will look as good as the drilling when we go out and pan it up. Mining is a peculiar activity. It's possible to be a few feet away from a fortune and be completely unaware of it. After digging a test trench and finding nothing, they would suddenly hit a pocket of rich pay after moving the digger 10 feet to the left. The game was a high-stakes, tense game of geological hide and seek. All throughout the operation, the stress was growing intolerable. A tornado of anxious energy, Parker drove back and forth between the two locations, monitoring progress, motivating his troops, and overseeing the exorbitant expenses of fuel and equipment upkeep. The idea of how a teenager could manage that degree of stress raises many concerns. He was more than a child. He was the chief executive officer of a complicated, risky, and very costly business. The breakthrough then came at the worst possible moment. The Wolf-Cut crew eventually reached the stratum they had been hoping for after weeks of unrelenting digging. It was rich pay dirt. The mats in the box glowed gold when they ran their first test scale. At last, the land that had been their greatest obstacle gave up its secret treasure. Almost simultaneously, the drift-cut crew hit gold in an almost amazing turn of events. They had found a deposit large enough to sustain their enterprise for the foreseeable future, proving that their diligent search had been fruitful. Everyone was hit by it at that point. It had worked, this crazy high-risk plot of Parker's to divide the teams. All of a sudden, it made obvious. While one team was paying for their present, the other had secured their long-term future. In the mining world, word of his double achievement spread like wildfire. At that point, everyone understood that Parker Schnabel was more than just a young child with a well-known last name. He truly was a formidable opponent. Now that gold was coming in from two different places, the real test was just around the corner. Removing it from the ground before their own equipment broke down. Parker's operation went into overdrive as gold began to flow from both crews. He focused on a huge gold deposit that he thought might make everyone involved extremely wealthy because he was now an expert prospector. Parker seems quite eager to find out what lies at the bottom of this pit, in my opinion. Definitely. I'm not sure if he or we are more excited. However, it's a peculiar fact of gold mining that, once one issue is resolved, another one appears right away. Nobody anticipated the fact that their own equipment would soon turn into their worst adversary. You see, Parker's wash plant, his antiquated gold processing machine, was just no longer dependable. To keep the dirt moving, he had been using a hired equipment. However, Mark, his new crew leader, hated utilizing borrowed equipment. The problem is that rented equipment is frequently outdated, badly maintained, and infamously ineffective. Every obstacle was made more difficult by the fact that Parker's top guy, Mitch, was not present at the time. Their goal was to quickly install and start up their own specially designed wash plant, the powerful Big Red. It went crazy at this point. Like a multi-ton puzzle, the crew had to transport the enormous machine into position and assemble it piece by piece. They had to guide a massive metal tube known as the tailings conveyor into the ideal position in a critical and challenging stage. To properly lay the enormous piece of steel, a great deal of work was required, including the use of heavy chains and the careful handling of excavator operators. The machine was at last ready after all that back-breaking labor. At this point, Parker made a startling choice that made the stakes very clear. Since they had discovered the richest paid dirt there, he made the decision to totally block off all access. His own mine was locked down. In reality, this was a deliberate maneuver to shield his find from curious onlookers and free up his staff to concentrate entirely on harvesting the gold without any outside interruptions. Although the move had the potential to yield a huge reward, it also put all the responsibility on his squad to perform. Parker's Alaskan mine site had grown into a vast expansive business 2 years after it was first set up. They were prepared to see what their claim could actually provide after clearing almost a mile of old-timers' rubbish. That's quite fine, but there are 35 colors, even the smallest ones, and that's a great pan. Yes. Simply drag a few thousand yards up since we're panning some gold in it, and part of it doesn't have gold in it. All right. I'll simply blast out of here then, return in 2 days. I'd also like to see what's within. Yes. It sounds good. They had the audacious plan to extract 1 ounce of gold for each hour the machines were in operation. However, they encountered a problem when they were just getting started. Instead of using a specific scale calibrated for trow, the official unit of weight for precious metals, they used a regular scale. Despite the small problem, they proceeded with their initial weigh-in since they were eager to see results. At 13.80, they barely missed their target. Nevertheless, for the first hour of digging, that gold was still worth more than $23,000. An amazing outcome and a preview of the enormous wealth that lies ahead. However, this early success was only a prelude to the impending golden flood. The catastrophe and the golden flood. That initial weigh-in success was just the start. The gold started to accumulate at an incredible pace as the group found a groove. The magnitude of the wealth they were uncovering is something that is rarely discussed. They had 3 pans so full of gold during one cleanup that they appeared like they were from a movie. They weighed in an astounding 253.80 after one amazing day of mining non-stop. They weren't simply mining gold, as they made almost $820,000 in a single day. They were essentially creating money. Their overall total at this stage of the season was an astounding $7,381.10. Parker, who was always renowned for looking out for his staff, chose to give them a surprise prize. He offered each member of his core group a surprise bonus of $122,000 in solid gold, a move that sent shockwaves across the camp. The fact that he saw their triumph as a collaborative effort was a strong statement. However, just as everything appeared to be going smoothly, another catastrophe occurred. Rocks started to jam their multi-million-dollar equipment. Evan, a recent hire, was the first to identify the issue. To get rid of the congestion, they had to repeatedly shut down Big Red. Now back in command, Mitch identified the problem right away. Deep within Big Red, a screen was ripped, letting big rocks fall through and creating obstructions downstream. This was a serious issue. In addition to significantly slowing them down, the obstructions were probably costing them gold each time the machine became clogged. It was a difficult and risky task for Mitch to climb up and replace the enormous heavy screen himself. Mining resumed when the issue was resolved, but the difficulties persisted. They quickly found that the fine gold was not settling properly in the SLLE boxes because pebbles were also obstructing the water flow. Once more, the screen was shattered. This series of issues demonstrated how a one minor malfunction could jeopardize the entire operation. Till we're doing all this work, more and more material would have accumulated in the SLE runs if Evan hadn't seen this. We're not finding any gold despite cleaning all these pebbles. But after Big Red was permanently mended, it was time to find out what it was truly capable of. And the outcomes were unbelievable. Once their main wash unit was operating at full capacity, the gold totals started to rise into the stratosphere. Following the significant restoration, the initial cleanup produced a substantial 51.60 of gold valued at approximately $90. It demonstrated that the correction had been successful. The cleanup from their other wash plant, which they referred to as Sluifer, came next. An incredible 210 ounces were produced by this machine. The most exciting part, however, was still to come. To weigh the gold from Sluifer's primary last cleanout for that time, the whole crew assembled around the scale. The digital display's numbers continued to rise, surpassing 100 and 200 ounces until coming to a startling halt at 360.50. Their second-best machine's cleanup alone was worth about $600,000. The gold room was alive with excitement. Then it really got to them. They weren't just having a good run when this much gold was being extracted from the earth by several machines at once. They had a famous motherlode on their hands. It was at this point that Parker's major choice became clear. He finally decided to cut off all access to his mine because of the size of the cleanups and the incredibly rich dirt. He was probably enjoying one of the highest pay streaks of his career, which is the reality that no one anticipated. And he had to keep it safe from corporate spies, other miners, and anybody else who might want a piece of the action. Parker Schnabel had officially scored the largest jackpot of his life with this daring, unheard of act that sent shockwaves through the whole gold mining community. The official account is seldom the only one told, though, when there is so much money at stake and a popular TV show is covering it. Parker blocked access to millions of dollars worth of gold, but what was he attempting to prevent? Competitors or secrets? For more, hit like and subscribe.